This video will be on how to wedge your clay. Before we get to that, I previously did a video on reclaiming clay, and you'll recall that I put it in this baking pan with an old t-shirt, and I didn't show you in that video how the clay just slowly dries and peels away. The shirt is absorbing a lot of the water from the clay, and I just want to show you how it looks as it's drying. And you can see how it pulls away from the t-shirt. I'm just going to take it out of the red pan, give you a better visual. You can see how still a little wet. Ideally, I would let that dry a bit longer, but I do want to show you how you can flip it just to dry the other side, because this surface side is still quite wet, and if you were to wedge it at this stage, it would be too wet. So there's one way that you can just take your t-shirt and just turn it over. You can see how it just peeled away with leaving very little. If you do it at the right time, it'll just kind of flop right over to the other side, and then you'll just put it back in your container, or not, doesn't have to be, but you can just sit it back in there, let the other side dry, and then once it dries and pulls away just like you saw with the other side, you know that it's ready to be wedged. So I thought I'd show you that. And with wedging, there's two different methods of wedging clay. We often refer them to ram's head method or the spiral method. So I'll first begin and show you the ram's head method, and I'll explain in a minute why it's called that. To wedge, the surface you want to wedge on, this is a canvas top, but you can certainly use your piece of sheetrock to wedge on. That's a great absorbent surface. You could use a laminate surface. You could use a piece of wood. However, you would want to get like a soft piece of plywood, something that doesn't have a lot of grain in it, because then it'll get stuck and it won't really work very well. So you can see the best, I'm just going to work on the canvas. I'm going to try to allow you to see how this works. So I'm going to give it a little bit of water, not too much. And I apologize, this table's pretty wobbly. But you can see I'm taking my hands, pretty much the palms of my hands, and I'm just cupping them, and I'm pressing down and pulling it back around. And again, pushing it down, pulling it back around. And you can see the layers that it makes in the clay. See how it folds over on itself? And the reason for that is it gets the clay particles aligned, and also releases any air pockets that are trapped inside of the clay. Oftentimes when you're wedging clay, if there is air trapped inside, you'll hear little pops, and you'll know that it's releasing that. So that's a good sign. And so you can hopefully just see my hand pulling back and revolving it on itself. And I mentioned about the ram's head, and well, they call it that because they think that looks like a ram's head, which I suppose it does. And just keep doing that. Good 5 minutes or so for your clay is ideal. Some people say 100 times, 100 rotations. Usually just with enough practice, you'll be able to feel when it's ready and all the air pockets are out. Be careful. A lot of students, I do notice, will have a tendency to just want to smush it. You know, they just want to like flatten it out, and it's really hard then to get it to rotate, and it's tricky if you do it that way. You press it too flat, because what you're really doing is trapping more air than releasing the air. I'm going to spritz it down just slightly again because it does tend to dry out, especially in the canvas. Another thing I see students often do is not cup their hands enough, and around the sides, their clay will, they're just kind of pressed down, but they'll use either their fingers more or this part of their hand instead of the palm, and they'll just kind of work the clay like this, and then it just keeps getting away from them and turning into like a log. And ideally, that's not what you want to do. You kind of want to cup your hands in a way that'll keep it from growing outward. So again, with the palms of your hand, you just want to push it in and revolve like that. And put your body into it. You can see how I'm hunched over. I'm really pushing, using my body weight to just push into the clay so that it isn't so hard on my wrist. This is quite a workout if you do it for a good length of time. And then to round it off, when you know you're finished, or when you believe you're finished, take the ram's head fold and just kind of pack it down. And you'll have like almost a ball. But these little creases here, you can just revolve like that in a circle, do both sides, the top and bottom. And you can pack it in and have a little nice shape of clay to do multiple things with. Often, you know, you could make a slab with this. This is also how we prepare the clay for the wheel. If we're going to throw on the potter's wheel, we'll pack it in a circle and then be able to put it on the potter's wheel and throw it from there. And wedging is a good rule of thumb to do pretty much whenever you're beginning to make anything in clay. It's a really good, it's a very important step to get all that air particles out, air pockets out, and the particles all aligned. So that's the ram's head method. There is also what's called the spiral method, and I'll show you how that looks. And that's pretty much similar to the ram's head method, where you're going like this, but you just kind of actually rotate it on its side and it spirals into a circle. So let me just spritz down my water quickly and I'll begin to show you. So this, I'm using my palms of my hands for this technique, and the right hand is a little bit higher, and I'm pressing down, similar to when I revolve it with the ram's head, but I'm pushing it kind of counterclockwise. So I'm just kind of putting my body weight into it again. And you're still going to hear the air pockets pop, and you'll still see that revolving layers of clay. That's what you want to see. My hands are kind of like this at the top. They're just kind of really tightly together. They're not, you know, I'm not playing the piano. I'm really using the palms of my hands. A little bit slower. And the same thing to round it off when you're finished is just to pat it down. Have something like that. Smooth out that side. Pack it into a ball. And you can do this ahead of time and prepare your clay and then just put it and cover it with plastic, and it's all wedged up, ready to go for when it comes time to make. So it's a step you can do ahead of time to save you some time and energy. That way it's already done. Some people like to just, I know often when I throw in the wheel, I like to just go in the studio and wedge and wedge. It's almost like gets you into the rhythm of the day of, you know, the physicality of work and getting started, but it's completely up to you. The last thing I want to show you with wedging clay is a good thing to check to make sure that your clay is properly wedged is to take your wire cutter and just cut through your freshly wedged clay and make sure that there is no air pockets. If you do see holes or pockets of air, you know that you definitely need to either wedge longer or you're not really doing it properly. So that's a good test for yourself to see. If you do that, you have to start back from the beginning and do a little bit more wedging. And then, of course, remember to cover it well with plastic. So good luck with wedging.